Welcome friends to the show today. Super grateful for you to be here with me today because we have what I would suggest is probably one of our greatest pieces of expertise. It's around short-term vacation rentals. So if you're someone that owns a home looking to rent it, or someone who wants to rent a vacation home, watch this show in its entirety. I think you're going to get a lot of really good intel because we've learned so much being in the space over the past 15 years. But before we dive into that, if it's your first time tuning in, thank you for being here. It means a lot. You probably had a friend that told you about this and you're wondering maybe what we are, what we're doing. So I'll give you that. My name's Stephen Petasky, founder of the Luxus Group. We've been in business for the last 15 years in this vacation rental, ownership, management, and development space. Go to the first episode if you want to hear more about the history of me and our company. And why are we doing it? Because we want to help you. We want to take this unbiased, unfiltered information we get from around the world every year and every day and pass it on to you. We have destination highlights, we have things around regulation like you're going to hear today, things around how to rent your home, things about private clubs and communities, lots of really unique information. So while today's around short-term rentals, tune in and watch the show list to see if there's something else that inspires you that you want to learn more about. And of course, if you know of anyone who could be interested, please send it to them. Again, my wife's helping people. The more that we can help, the happier I'll be, and we'll keep this show rolling along. Okay, let's dive right in to STVRs. So kicking off, what does that even mean, STVR? You've probably seen it, or you've seen STR, the acronym, short-term vacation rentals or short-term rentals. Now, what does it actually mean? It seems obvious, but there is a specific definition, which is basically commonly used around the globe, is vacation stays for 29 days or less. That's very important to know because 30 days plus generally considered a long-term stay under a totally different regulatory environment. STVRs is what you most commonly think of as VRBO, or vacation rental by owner. We're going to talk about the history of it, where it was 15 years ago. It's changed dramatically, and where it is today, where it still continues to change and evolve every day, which will affect you as a landlord, someone to look to get into the space, to be a renter, to create revenue from your property, or someone who just wants to rent a property. It's really good understanding the rules around STVRs. 15 years ago, pre-Airbnb, many of you, we can't even think of a time pre-Airbnb. It's so ingrained in our culture now as one of the primary tools and vehicles to travel to vacation properties around the world. But 15 years ago, they didn't exist. If you think about, I think it was 2008 is when they were actually founded. And now they are the largest, which is unbelievable and just hard to even fathom, the largest room provider in the world. If you asked Marriott in 2007, said, are you afraid of someone joining the industry that's going to overtake you in number of rooms available across the globe? They would say 100% unequivocally no. There's zero chance we'll be the largest hotel provider and room provider in the world forever. Well, sorry for Marriott, they're at 1.4 million rooms. Airbnb's at 6 million rooms globally and growing exponentially faster, simply because of the mass amount of inventory around the world, around single family homes and condos and apartments, townhomes, and so on and so forth. Now, there are different offerings, but the big thing that Airbnb offered that previous home rental platforms did not offer is a form of sophistication around the technology and a level of consistency that did not exist before. So let's cover both those off. We'll talk about consistency first. VRBO, vacation rental by owner. As we know, and you've probably had experience yourself, I've had many, it is inconsistent. And now it's gotten a lot better, and I give VRBO a lot of credibility. They've done a much better job on validating the landlords, validating the properties, but it's not quite at where Airbnb and other luxury platforms are at, but it's tremendously better than what it used to be. But we've all been there. You see the pictures, this beautiful sunset over the pool. Everything looks great, and then you show up to the property and it's a bad experience. The pool doesn't work, and one of the bedrooms, bed is broken, whatever it may be, and that's because there was no one really governing. It was just a listing service, all it really was. What the world really needed was someone that had a listing service coupled with the ability to provide consistency and hold landlords accountable for what they show is what people get. Now, there were luxury platforms, small boutique ones like Luxury Retreats, for example, that at the much higher scale, both in terms of dollar value, were able to provide that, but there's a much higher commissions associated. It wasn't a listing service. They were providing a full end-to-end user experience, and we'll cover that shortly. Airbnb now offered the ability to create consistency because you rank your landlords, you rank the experience. And not dissimilar, in fact, very much aligned with Uber, is you're ranking your driver on your experience. And if you're getting a crappy ranking, you're probably not going to get hired. If you're a landlord delivering an inconsistent experience with what you're illustrating on the website through the platforms, then no one's going to stay with you. It's pretty simple. So Airbnb has added this remarkable sophistication to this process at scale. Imagine trying to monitor 6 million rooms to know you're delivering a consistent experience. It is a huge undertaking, and it's imperfect. There's no way to do it at that level of scale perfect unless you are a hotel or you own your own second home. But at that level of scale, it's just not possible, simply because you can't have control over every mom and pop owner around the globe in their homes. But you can have certain standards in place to ensure a pretty darn good experience that will likely come close to matching what you expect to receive in the property. So that's consistency, really important aspect, and a really big change to what happened in the industry. Now we'll talk about sophistication of technology. That is obviously, Airbnb is a technology company more than call it a room sharing technology. They started with people couch surfing, and now they have Airbnb Lux, where they rent luxury villas around the world. And in fact, several of our properties have been on that platform in the past and been highlighted. They've done a really, really great job of providing, before they were really about here, they're about here now. So not advocating to say that they're best in the world, they are just the easiest to talk about because they're the ones that created that actual disruption to the industry. So the amount of money behind them and the platforms they have to make it user-friendly for a landlord and user-friendly for a consumer is the best in the world. It's remarkable what they spent, and then they are obviously on an incredible growth run to get to a point where they will always be the largest room provider in the world, probably as time goes on. So when you scale from 0 in 2008 to 6 million rooms now, you're going to turn some heads. You're going to break a few eggs along the way. And I think when they started, no one really expected massive industry change. But they have created, when I say disruption, the most disruption maybe I've seen in a technology company, because governments have had to vote on them at every level to regulate them in their specific towns and cities and states. So now, again, think, vacation rentals existed beforehand and people just kind of let it be free will, you do whatever you want. Now you have to actually vote against something, and you're going to your city council, you're going to a ballot within get your citizens to vote on it, because so many people were listing their homes. It was so easy for landlords to put their homes on this, and as a result, communities were becoming transient. I'll use New York as an example. There were whole buildings that investors were buying up, and they would just list them all on Airbnb, and no one was actually living there. So these buildings, these residential buildings designed specifically for people to live in part or full time, became, de facto hotels. Well, obviously you can imagine the hotel groups did not like that very much. So hotel lobbies got organized, and New York was one of the first ones to implement anti-transient laws, but really they more commonly referred to as anti-Airbnb laws. So New York was one of the first, but even as recent as this past couple months, we have cities such as Rancho Mirage, California, San Diego, and a lot of itch beach cities are going through votes as we speak on regulating short-term rentals, simply because they've been unregulated for so long. Now, the good thing with regulation, there's been a couple important things to know. Good thing with regulation, if you're an investor buyer and you choose to acquire a home for the purposes of short-term rentals, you don't have the uncertainty that's existed for the past decade now, because it's actual law. So if you go to some of these cities that have laws in place and you buy in a building, not just a building, a city or jurisdiction that allows for it, you're set, because you're going to be in a position to rent that without issue. Now you're going to have to register for your STVR permit, which is a very standard protocol. You're going to have on-site property management, which is generally part of all protocols. A number they can reach you 24/7. If something happens at your property, you have to pay fees, and you have to file every single year. Cover that in another episode that gets a bit more in the minutia of actually listing your home. But the nice part about it is you can actually do it. A lot of our clients have bought places the past 10 years in these markets, unknowing what cities are actually going to regulate and when and what the outcome is going to be. So we had friends that own places in Vancouver, for example. When Vancouver regulated in 2018 Airbnb, I'll be off by a little bit here, forgive me, but about 70% of the Airbnb landlords lost their listings based on the new rules. I had friends that were getting married in that city at that time, and they were booked at Airbnb, all their clients from their guests from around the world, and almost all of them got canceled simply because the city enforced rules. It happened very quickly, and then people had to shift gears and find hotels and other accommodations. So good thing is that's the past. Now, if you are looking to buy and invest for the purposes of the short-term rental, 100% you need to understand the rules of that specific jurisdiction and what they mean to you. Now, what you're going to look for is if you just Google your city, I'm going to put in San Diego, I'm going to put in short-term rules, city council or something, you're going to get a lot of information pretty much in any city that would be have a lifestyle element to it. Now, certain cities that don't have a lifestyle or call it vacation expectation or a consistent vacation or base, they may not have the same regulation. But when it comes to these places that people go for lifestyle reasons, they are all of either approved laws or in the process of reviewing them, debating them, and approving new laws. So make sure you understand the rules. If the law is already passed, great, you know what you're buying. Now you have to worry about the rules associated with the communities. I'm going to come back to that. Now, if the laws have not passed, you're taking a risk. And it could be a risk that has a big benefit at the end of the day, where you take a gamble on a specific city that you're unsure on which side they're going to land, and then it votes in favor of renting. Well, your values have probably gone up, your rental rates have probably gone up because other people will lose them. On the flip side, you could lose the ability to have a short-term vacation rental, which we've seen so many times over and over and over the past decade. So really interesting times as we think about the short-term vacation rental space, and we'll talk a bit about the community aspect as it relates to their control over short-term vacation rentals. As we move from the government level to the community level, and we say any community that has an HOA or homeowners association, they have the ability to regulate their own sets of rules related to STVR. This, generally speaking, pre-government level jurisdictions was the way that people prevented the ability for people to rent out their homes every single weekend and create a culture in a community that's inconsistent with what I think the majority of the residents would want to see. So in addition to understanding the city's rules, you really need to understand the HOA rules. Generally speaking, I'll simply say that an HOA for the most part does not allow short-term vacation rentals, and in many of the luxury ones, they actually won't even allow 30-day rentals or month-long rentals. It's like 6 months or a year leases at a time. Very, very important to understand. So to get into that level of detail, you're not going to look online on what the city's passed through their various laws and bylaws. You'll actually look to the HOA documents, usually called CC&Rs, review those and get the information. Use your agent to find that for you. That's what their job is for. Don't try to do this on yourself. You need someone there that helps to understand what they are and what to look for. Usually it's very specific and not too hard to find. We've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in our time, so we know exactly what page to go to. And some of the older rules would have allowed short-term vacation rentals to exist, but understand, while a city has to go through a very formal process on potentially taking it to the ballot or whatever it may be, a community can change it like in the course of one motion at the AGM. You get enough people in the community that don't like the fact there's short-term vacation rentals. They tell the board, which are obviously residents of that community, their friends and neighbors, and they can shut it down immediately. We have had lots of clients lose their ability to rent because of this specific situation. So even if a city allows it, does not mean you can actually do it within a gated community. So it's another very important layer of diligence you need to do if you have the intent to buy a home and rent it and try to create revenue for under 30 days, or even as you get to luxury communities, 6 months or 1 year or less. So highly encourage you to use those tools because they're there, the information's out there, there's no excuse not to have them. It just takes extra time to find the diligence and get into a place where you're armed with great information so you don't make a mistake. Now, at a macro level, what does this actually mean for the industry? For me, this is something that we've seen in particular the last 24 months since COVID-19, and I think we're going to continue to see over the coming years. But essentially, you look at a macro level, we had VRBO, 2007 and before. 2008, Airbnb came and ramped up vacation rentals, making it so easy for every landlord and everyone to list their couch, office, den, room, or luxury house on the open market. Now regulations come, and regulations knocked off a huge percentage and chunk of these homes, and in some cities have made it impossible to actually rent vacation homes now. So with this declining amount of inventory, now again, there's still lots of people that rent. There's 6 million rooms. There's no shortage, but in certain markets, it's very finite on what people are actually renting. But declining amount with all the regulation that's existed and an increase in demand that we've seen due to COVID. And I say increase in demand, COVID's really had a drive and a trend towards people leaving cities for that period of time to work remotely. So a lot of the rural destinations, urban sprawl destinations have seen a huge tailwind when maybe some of the cities that urbanization have seen a bit of headwinds on it. Now the big cities are world class, San Diego, Los Angeles, New York. They're going to re-attract people back to the core, but it's there are a lot of people who have permanently decided to change the way that they live by looking at these types of homes. They've done it not necessarily purely by buying homes, but they've done it by short-term rentals, moved into long-term rentals. And as a result, inventory has shrunk. Because when you start into a market, you may not be prepared to rent a home for a year or 2 years. You rent it for a month at a time or 2 weeks at a time. So what we've seen again, this divergence of declining inventory and this increase on demand, and as a result, rental rates are the highest they've been in a long time, since probably pre-Great Recession, which would be 2006. And supply and demand issue is what happens. Now the difference is developers could usually catch up on supply when there's that level of demand. So a really important aspect. It's a market fundamental of how a market rebalances itself. You just add more inventory onto a market when there's this demand for a particular product. Well, guess what? It's very hard to add short-term vacation rental inventory now because regulation, again, coming back to this many, many times, and the ability for the very few pockets of places where you are allowed to build vacation rentals, which would be previously transient zone land within various cities. It takes a long time to get these types of permits and approvals. It takes years for a developer to get those permits and then actually add them into inventory to build them out. Now there is a ton of smart developers out there doing this as we speak, but we're currently, in the current environment we see right now, they are not catching up to the demand. So as a result, there's less inventory at a higher price. So if you're looking to vacation rent, you are on the consumer side looking to rent, and you're thinking about Hawaii for next year, I'm talking 2022, 2023, not winter 2022, book now. I promise you it's going to be a tight market for these high demand lifestyle destinations, simply because COVID still exists, there's variants, it's preventing fluid travel around the world. So if you're in America, for example, you have the ability to have city, desert, ski, ocean, and beach. Those are going to have a really high demand, and I encourage you to go ahead and book earlier, because we're seeing a lot of clients right now try to book for 3-4 months from now, and there is nothing available, and what is available is so, I don't want to say obscenely, but we'll call it market price, but very high priced, and they just aren't, it's unaffordable now for so many people. So that is STVR in a nutshell. There is, we'll probably do more videos on this, and we want your feedback on what information you want us to dive into deeper. But it is really an evolving, changing, fascinating market on what's happened in the last 15 years. And I think what's going to happen in the next 5 years will be just as interesting as the rest of the world gets on board with this regulation and what it does to you as a vacation renter, so the consumer, or for someone that's an investor looking to get into the space. Tremendous opportunity, I do believe, financially for those looking to get into the space if you get in intelligently. Reach out to us in the show notes. We will have some information there if you want to ping us. We can give some more advice and feedback. We have an advisory service that actually supports people on this side, so 100% reach out to us if you're curious to learn more. And if you're not, but you got a buddy that might be interested, share this with them. Sharing's caring. We want to make sure this word gets out to the world. So thanks very much. We'll see you in the next show.